Hi, everyone, and welcome to the I Am Landscape Growth Podcast, where entrepreneurs help entrepreneurs grow faster, better, and stronger in the green industry. From leadership to sales to recruiting and operational excellence, we cover the topics holding entrepreneurs back and share how to get past those bottlenecks with the best in the industry. I'm your host, Rob Murray, co founder and CEO of Intrigue, a digital marketing company focused on helping landscape companies grow. So sit back and enjoy the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the I Am Landscape Growth Podcast. Today, an amazing guest, Grant Harrison from Nextra Consulting. I think I've known Grant for the better part of 5, maybe 6, maybe more years than that. Had a chance to hang out in a lot of different industry associations and over the last couple of years, and I think the audience and all of you listening are going to be pumped to hear the perspective from Mr. Harrison. So Grant, thank you so much for doing this, man.
Oh, Rob, thank you so much for the great introduction. And yeah, it's been a couple years since we've met each other, and it's always exciting to hang out with you and to be part of the landscape industry. And excited to be on the podcast today.
Sweet, mate. All right, quick Cole's notes. Give people a quick summary of your experience in the green space and kind of what you're up to today.
Yeah, so grew up like so many landscape contractors in the industry. Started as a summer job in high school. Ended up going to Humber College in Toronto for my landscape technician diploma. And really just stayed within the industry since then. Still working in the industry today. Um, Came back and worked for after I graduated, got married, moved to London, worked for a couple local contractors in London, and then ended up into the London Clintar franchise, and then at head office. And we did a stint of owning a design build company for 5 years there. And then 6 years ago, my wife and I started Nextra Consulting. And again, we're just coaching and helping contractors make money with their trade. And through HR services, financial services, coaching, education. We love education and doing all that kind of stuff. And really just teaching people not to make the same mistakes we did and helping them, yeah, just with their business and doing that. So we're excited to talk about owners growth constraints for owners today, and
Yeah, awesome.
hopefully people walk away with some
Yeah.
tips.
Well, that's so. I mean, it's beautiful, right? Because like the whole theme of the podcast is what's the primary growth constraint holding entrepreneurs back in the green industry, and it's all about helping people grow so they can make more money and have more success with whatever they define as success with their lives and have a business designed to serve them. So, I mean, we're going to talk a little bit about money mindset and teams, plus time management. You mentioned a couple of things, but why don't we just ask you the question of what you see as the primary growth constraint holding entrepreneurs back in the green industry?
Yeah, so I think, and I'm guilty of these. So I have these scars on my back when as I moved up through the industry. But the three things we said were just really the relationship with money. How they see money is really important of how they can growth or what hampers them from growth. Their people skills or the people that they have around them and how they manage their time. And I think the time one is coming out more and more lately that we're seeing over and over again. But yeah, if an owner can kind of get hold of these three things, we think there's a huge opportunity then for to get that next step in the business and start to grow.
Okay, well, let's break them down then, because like you say how they interact or view or deal with money, relationship with money. Are we talking about like their accounting, the way they do their, they run their business by their bank account, they're doing accrual, or they actually like have some guilt about having lots of money? And like how do you kind of break down this relationship with money for folks?
Yeah, I think most of the time what we see is that owners have a relationship or a viewpoint of money that started early on in their lives. Maybe some of us, like I grew up in a household that didn't have a lot of money. So my parents told me that money was a scarcity and you have to keep it, don't spend it. Yeah, you have a different money, and that has come into my life. And I always still see money as that, even though that hampers my ability to grow my business, even my own current business. And when we had the contracting business, so what you grew up with, what your parents' viewpoint of money is, really takes us all the way through, our adolescence into our teenage years, into our adult years, and but then it really comes into effect as you build a business and as you become an owner, because money is what a lot of times. money is what can grow the business. But if you have that scarcity mindset of money, you're not going to be able to grow the business when it comes to that. So, and you need that resource. And if you look at it that way, you're going to see that type of stuff. And I would imagine you guys see it all the time when you're helping contractors with marketing, right? It's money that they have to spend in order to grow their business. And a lot of people don't see it that way. They just see it as an expense and not an investment within their own business. So, and then that just rolls right into how they look at money within the business. They don't. Again, I didn't take an accounting course. When I was in high school, I didn't take an accounting course in technical school, and they just don't know the relationship of money. They don't know how to read a profit and loss statement. They don't know what cash flow means. They're just honestly looking in their bank account, and when the numbers are getting close to zero, they go into negative, and it impacts them negatively. And a lot of times, you could budget to go into negative point, into being an overdraft for that month. But if you look at it and say, "Hey, listen, we're only supposed to be $10,000 in overdraft, and we're only at 5,000," that's a huge win. But
Right.
you have to kind of go into that mindset of like with a budget and with some numbers and understanding that numbers are not emotional, but they just tell a story. But if again you already have this negative relationship around money, then it affects all kinds of aspects of the business and how you do it.
So let's assume for a moment that I do have maybe a scarcity mindset around money or a negative relationship with money. What's something that I can start doing today to start changing that around and make it look like a more positive, healthy, abundant mentality?
I think the best thing is surround yourself with people that think about money as a resource. That's I think I've learned that from people that don't look at money the way I look at it. I just see how they look at money, how they use money, how they invest with money. And it just changes my mindset because I look at it and go, oh, well, I've always been taught this, but there's a different viewpoint that someone else is bringing into my life. And I like my mom and dad are amazing, but they didn't have someone else maybe in their lives that looked at it differently. So I just learned that. So surrounding yourself with people that look at money differently. To me, finding help, like someone who can speak into you, whether it's a coach, or a mentor, some professional help. Even the one thing I love about the landscape industry is tons of people in the landscape industry that are willing to help you look at that and just give you a different perspective of what money looks like and how it can help you grow your business. But if you don't surround yourself with those people or look out and ask for that type of help, you're just going to continue to have the same outlook on money that you've always had.
I think it's spot on. And so some of the things that I would love to break down, but I mean, even myself, growing up, we didn't have much at all. And so I didn't necessarily have an investor's mindset out of the gate. I think Think and Grow Rich, classic resource. If anybody wants to go check it out, Napoleon Hill really does a pretty decent job of diving into, money concepts and that relationship with money. But I think what you're saying too about like being around others that look at money differently, maybe a peer group, coach or mentor, it can be massively helpful, and it has been in my life. I mean, I know you're a coach and that you're helping people with this, obviously, because you bring it up. But when you look at how to get around other people, where do you see places that people can go check out if they're listening to this, right now, and they're like, all right, maybe I do want to start hanging out with some people that look about money differently.
I think it's again like the landscape industry is awesome. So there's lots of people there that that we're willing to help you. I think the resources, I think books are amazing. There's tons of great books out there that you can listen to. There's lots of good podcasts you can listen to. Even just building a relationship with your bank, like with your banker. If you have a good relationship with your banker, and they deal with money all the time. So be able to reach out to there. But I think the number one thing I would recommend someone to do is find a mentor that has maybe been where you're at, and that is on the other side of that. Someone who has maybe built a business that's ahead of yours, that went through what you're thinking, that you went through where you were. They were thinking, they had a mentality of that money, was not a resource. And then they've gone through that scenario, they've worked through those mindsets, and then they're on the other side of that. And I think that's probably the best thing you could do is find that person that's gone through that journey that can help you through that.
Awesome. peer network associations, even entrepreneurs organization. There's all sorts of places, even someone that that's growing a business, reach out, right? And I think one of the things that you mentioned earlier about the landscape industry, at Intree, we've worked with a lot of different industries over the years, and only over the last, like, whatever, 3 to 5 have we really focused in on the green industry. But this industry is way more open than typical other types of businesses. I'm not sure what it is about landscapers, but everybody's like willing to share. And it's like this like co-opetition, and everybody's super collaborative. And it's remarkably refreshing. So you can always reach out to somebody in the space, no question.
Mhm.
All right. You mentioned the people thing. So I mean, it wasn't wasn't there's some saying, right, for entrepreneurs, if it wasn't for customers and staff, I'd love my business.
Yeah. So, I think most people, if you own a business, at some point, people has been your vein of the pain that you have, right? And that's true. If it wasn't for the staff you had and the customers you have, business would be really, really easy to do. And it surely would be. And we've all been there, and that's typically what tires us out the most, and what makes us so frustrated. And as the landscape industry, all we really want to do is build beautiful things, right? So if we could just build beautiful things in our own backyard all day, it would be great, but we do have to deal with people, and that's the reality of owning a business. And it's the people in the business that's going to allow you to grow the business. You cannot do it on your own. We see too many business owners trying to do this on their own and not leverage, not be able to use people and help allow people to help you grow the business. So, and again, we've all been burnt by people. So we hired our first employee, typically that first employee is not with us, right? So maybe that first employee didn't leave well. So we had all been burnt by people. We all have scars on our back. We become cynical towards our staff. And then we stop wanting to give people, like, we stop trusting people. But that's the exact opposite of what you need to do. You actually do need to trust people. You need to stop micromanaging people. And you need to kind of get rid of that jagged, experience that we've had with people to do this. So, and again, that's hard because, our history tells us that if we do this with a staff member, we're going to get burned. But in order to grow, you need to be able to look at that, and you have to look at your staff differently. The biggest thing we see is that, again, you kind of touched on this, is the owner is typically the bottleneck. The owner is doing too many things, and we need to be able to delegate that stuff. We need to be able to train people to take on tasks. Even just a simple thing is hiring people that are smarter than yourself. Which is hard, right? That's some insecure. A lot of our owners and myself have insecurities about that. Why would I hire someone smarter than myself to be able to do that? But if you can start to hiring people that can smarter than you for run a division or run your finances or run your marketing, it doesn't have to be hired. Like, it doesn't have to be like a full-time person. It could be fractional, or an organization like yourselves to do marketing, like someone who knows it better than the owner does. But so many owners don't think like that. They think, well, I have to know all the answers. I have to be the one at the top that does understanding all these type of things, and then that's when you hit a level. You hit a ceiling there pretty quick in your organization, that everything has to go through, and you're the smartest person there.
Yeah, it's tough to take a day off when everything has to go through you, right? Um, so you mentioned in this whole idea around people and trusting more. And I mean, I think there's a couple of things that stuck out. One is, if you want to be trusted, you have to trust first. And so if we're not doing that, then it's difficult to build that inside our organizational environments. But you mentioned the idea of micromanaging, which is almost by definition, a mistrust approach to running a business, because I want to make sure you're doing everything the way I think you're supposed to do it, and I don't trust you to do it well. So I'm going to make sure I'm checking in on you and over your shoulder, and making you feel like you don't know what you're doing. If I feel the need to be micromanaging, and I have a mentality of, if you want to do it right, do it yourself, how do I start to shift that?
I think the biggest thing is you have to be able to shift that. Yeah, it's just, again, you have to get over the fact of, like, yes, this may be your history. Maybe the last person you did this with did break your trust. But just that's not fair to the next person you're hiring, right? So you really have to be able to sit there and say, I'm going to hire this person, make sure the person's well trained. I talk about the Peter principle a lot with clients right now, where we promote people into positions that they're not capable of doing. And we do this way too many times. And I have so many scars on my back from doing this where, and I got a lot of my promotions within the industry because of that, right? So like, hey, you're a second on the crew and the crew leader quits. So, you became crew leader, right? Just
Right.
because you were there, the truck was sitting idle. So you're the next guy to run the truck. And then, apparently I'm a really good crew leader. So then the next position comes open and then I'm start managing multiple crews, right? Just because I'm there and I showed a little bit of talent and a little bit of management skill. But no one ever taught me how to do that. No one ever pulled me aside and said, "Hey, Grant, like here's some management tips, or here's how to talk to people." And we just kind of got into default positions because we were there. And as ownership, we do this over and over again. And I think the trades are awful for this.
Mm.
Very few people can actually do this well. A lot of times people just can't move up. They can move up a couple levels, but as soon as you start managing people and not tasks, that's when a lot of our people struggle. And then we put them in a position, they struggle with it, and then they end up failing, and then we end up, kind of they leave or we have to let them go. And so many of that is because of the owner. The owner didn't take the time to train them. And then when that person's faulting, when they're not succeeding in their role, that's when we start to micromanage, right? We're like, oh, well, you're not doing it the way I should be doing, so I have to watch you. So but that problem started way earlier. That problem started when you put that person in the position because maybe they were there, they weren't qualified. We didn't train them. We didn't give them the tools they needed. We weren't clear about what the expectations were. And over again, it comes back to us as owners, right? We're micromanaging because we didn't do our job. We didn't train that person well. It's not the person's fault that they're struggling. It's us as an owner that we didn't do our part with that. So yeah, it's really really hard to do, and it's connected to money again. Like if you don't hire the right person to do that, because your perspective on money means you're going to hire someone within, which means you're going to get someone a little bit cheaper, right? So they kind of they're interconnected.
Yeah, no, that's
That
cool. I mean, and there's a lot in what you just said in the way that you illustrated that point. First of all, like as a heads up, if you're running a next man up type of organization, meaning that someone leaves and there's someone there, so they step up, maybe it's not, the best way to approach things, especially without any formal training and development. There's nothing wrong about taking somebody from your crew and giving them an opportunity to, be a leader, as long as they A, want to be one, and B, get given the tools to learn how to be one. Because I think, leadership is probably the most difficult thing to learn. There's obviously rocket scientists and that kind of thing, so I don't want to minimize, there's lots of things that are hard to learn, but, managing people and leading people is not easy. So making sure we got the tools to help them do that is super important. So like if we were to, we're talking to entrepreneurs right now who are listening about they want to grow their business. Maybe they've got one or two people that they think, could be pretty good as a leader inside the organization. When you look at training and developing a leader, any tips or tricks for folks out there on how they can go about doing that for folks? Because I find a lot of times people think training is like this big daunting, you know, program they got to build that everybody goes through the same way, and like there's some curriculum, and and it could be that, but I think sometimes it can often be a bit more simple. So I was just curious from your perspective and working with so many of these folks, what have you seen work well in terms of training and developing a leader from any, whether you bring them in or hire from within?
Mhm. I think the biggest thing is to create a good job description to start. Just a foundation of what a job description should be. Like what's expected, what's the measurables, what's the skill set required. And then once you kind of have that job description, what does it pay? Just all those things that we know what a job description is. And then at that point, then say to maybe that person that you see that you want to do that job, go to them and say, hey, would you be willing to apply for this job? And here's what it's going to take. Here's what you're going to do. Having an honest conversation with them to sit there and say, these are the skills that you currently have, but here's some skills that you don't have. And Some of the stuff we use, like if you use some sort of personality assessment, I would put that person through some sort of personality assessment. There's tons of assessments out there, but that assessment will help you as a hiring manager, but also help the employee understand what their skills, what they're good at, what they're not good at. And then, as a manager, you can then work with them on the skills maybe that they're not so good at, and creates a little bit of a playbook for you to do some education. So maybe they're really good technically, but they don't know how to manage people, right? Or they don't know how to talk to people. So then that you don't have to worry about the technical side that much, but at least hopefully when you meet this person regularly, you can start talking about some of the skills that we already identified as our weak points. And then they do come up, you can already refer back to it and say, hey, remember when you did your personality assessment here? This is how it's playing out right now. Like, when you avoid conflict, this is how you're avoiding conflict currently. And remember with the skill sets we talked to you about you know, how to deal with that type of stuff is already preset. So you've already pre-talked about that stuff. So when it does come up, it's not as awkward, and it's not as a difficult conversation to be able to do that. So to be able to do that. But on the same point, as you're identifying that person that could possibly come in, I would always look for someone outside the organization to do that. Like I think you should post every position within the company, because you might have a rock star come through the door, but that also then creates a lot of times it goes into another point where a lot of owners don't want to have hard conversations with their staff. So understand you might have to go back to that internal candidate and say, hey, we do have another rock star here. Doesn't mean that this is no for you forever, but it just means right now this person we're going to hire from without, like outside the organization, is probably a
Yeah,
better fit for you. But in the meantime, what can we start working with you now to get you ready for that next position that you're ready to do that? And most owners just don't want to do that. They just do not want to have that conversation. They're afraid that, the internal candidate will leave and they're going to make a big, huge issue about it. And they're just like, I just can't deal with that. So let's just hire the internal person and we'll see what happens.
right. And that seems like it'll go very well. Knowing that they probably aren't the best for the job, but let's do it because I don't want to have an easy. I would, and I think that's interesting too that you bring this up with a lot of business owners, entrepreneurs, even leaders of any sort inside organizations. There's this sense that if I have to let somebody go or say no to somebody when they're out looking for something, a raise, a promotion, that has to be a hard conversation. And I think we can start maybe helping folks reframe it, and I mean, this is something that you probably help a lot of people with, is around, it's an honest conversation. It's not actually that difficult if we frame it a bit more objectively. And one of the things I found really helpful around ensuring that we're going to do whatever we can to make sure people are happy and healthy. Like the last thing I want to do is put you into a position that you're not qualified for. It's going to stress you out like crazy because you're not winning. I'm not setting you up for success to be happy and healthy. And my job as a leader is to make sure everyone's happy and healthy and performing at above average level, if not excellent. Because we all do that. We're all having a good time together. I just don't understand why everybody sees it so negative. Maybe it's just a lack of clarity. I'm not sure. Do you have any insight on that? Why everybody thinks like these conversations have to be hard?
Yeah, I think again, I don't think we've been shown as leaders. I don't think people in front of us had these conversations with us either, right? There was one book. If one of the owners is looking for a book, there's a book called Crucial Conversations that we
Yeah,
hand out
magic.
regularly, and this book is amazing because it does turn it around on your perspective of hard conversations, and just like our perspective on money, right? Like it to me, after I read that book, I'm like, actually, the hard conversation is actually better for the person you need to have the conversation with, right? You're actually coming to them, in almost love, right? It's almost like a
Yeah,
parenting to sit there and say, listen, I don't want to put you into this situation. I care for you so much, that I just can't do this, right? And if I don't have this hard conversation with you, I really don't care for you. Like I'm not sharing I care, showing I care. So that book wholly transforms that for you, and explains. There's great practical insights on it, but it turns it around from this is a hard conversation to this is a conversation I have to have with you before I care. A lot of times, what happens when we come to these difficult conversations is in our heads we go through so many different scenarios. We want to work out the scenario of, okay, if I say this to this person, I have to have the three answers. Well, if they react well, if they don't react at all, or they react badly. And
Right.
then I got to go down from there. And if they react badly, I got to be able to say this, this, and this. And if they do that, then I got to go this, this, and this. And at that point, typically we're laying in our bed and 1 o'clock in the
Stewing.
morning
Yeah.
stewing about it. And then all we end up doing is not doing it. Right. We just end up not doing it because we don't know the scenarios and where it's going to go. Where for me, most of the times when you have these honest conversations with people, they may walk away with, not necessarily agreeing with you, but most of the time they come back and thank you in the end.
Mm,
Which is great. But if you don't do this enough, then you don't see that, right?
right. Yeah.
So that's kind of where you get a mentor, get a coach that says, no, like we've done this enough. This person may not thank you today for this, but they will thank you later for helping them out. Because if you don't do it in the end, it's going to end badly for both parties. So why
Why
do
even
that?
go down that path? Yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
great, man. And I think what you just said too about how a lot of people haven't had it modeled, whether it was from their own experience as they were building their careers, or if it's from a coach or a mentor they haven't had an opportunity to train with yet. I think that's a huge piece of it. Because if you don't see it, then you don't know it's possible. Once you see it, it's a lot more tangible. I think that's perfect. Um, so time management. This one's actually really fascinating perspective. Getting their time right for leaders. Um, what should I be prioritizing? Where should I be spending my time? And I think, and as I grow my business, how do I shift that? As it demands more of me. I see so many people just doing more, and their calendars get more full, and it starts to creep into, time where maybe it's not supposed to. So how do you help people look at this, and what does time management mean from Grant's perspective?
Um, so again, I was guilty of this all along, and I still fall into this trap as a business owner today, where I just get really busy. I think as a society, we have celebrated busyness, and I think when you meet someone or you talk to someone, typically the first conversation where it's like, how's it going? And typically our first response is, well, we're busy, right? So we start celebrating it as a society, and I'm guilty of this, right? And I'm like, well, obviously, if you're not busy, you're not contributing, right? There's this whole feeling of if you're busy, you're successful, and you need to be busy. And I think that just comes down to even how we grew up. Like my dad would be come home and like there was no way that on a Saturday morning my dad was going to let me sleep in, right? He was like, no, you got to get up and be productive. And if you're not being productive, you're not being good to society. So I grew up with that, right? I got to be busy. I got to be doing something. It may not be something that's productive, but at least don't you got to be busy. So I think we still come from that today. Like again, and my parents are awesome, but they taught me some stuff that they taught me some bad habits that I've had to come over. So again, and as a business owner, that becomes even harder because again, you're just wearing too many hats. You're the marketing person, you're the technician, you're the sales guy, you're the accountant. You're doing all these things because that's what you've been told you need to do, and that's the sacrifices you need to make as an entrepreneur and as a small business owner. And and again, I disagree with that. You don't need to be wearing all those hats, even starting in day one. There's no need for you to be wearing all those hats. So, but when we do that and when we wear all those hats, that's when stuff starts to fall apart. That's when
Hmm.
you start to, things start to break down, things start to get missed. So they kind of back to your original question is where's the resource that there's honestly tons of resources out there for you. There's all kinds of books. One of the book that I just got recommended is by Dan Martell, the Buy Back Your Time.
Oh,
And he
so
has a
good.
whole different perspective on that. Like he's like, stop hiring for people to grow your business and start hiring for people to buy back your own time. And I was like, this is ingenious. And I was like, this is incredible. So we've started to give some of these books away right now. And because we see it in my own life, but we also see it in so many of our contractors' lives, where it's just like just simple thing like hiring a personal assistant or an office admin to take away those tasks that you should be doing as an owner. Um, I always joke with our owners. I'm like, if you are supposed to get paid, let's say you want to bill yourself out at $150 an hour, would you pay someone $150 an hour to go pick up the mail or
Right.
to, whatever it is, whatever you're doing right now, you're doing tasks that you would never pay someone $150 an hour to do. So why are you doing it? Right. So pay someone else that's, that's really good at some of that, especially on the admin side of your business. Pay someone $25, $30 an hour to do those admin tasks that do them twice as fast as you do, that do them way better, that is just, they do a better job for it. They're
Yeah,
energized by doing that type of work, right? Most of our owners in the industry and most trade people don't like admin tasks, right? It
right.
actually burns them out. And then when it burns you out, you end up not doing it. But then it actually comes back and bites you in the butt when you actually don't do that type of stuff. So as owners, we're just way too busy. We're trying to do too many different things. And again, as a society, we celebrate those type of things. But yeah, it ends up hurting us. And there's just so many bad repercussions that happen to that when the owner's too busy and cannot manage their time. And that's
So
it. They're passive about their time.
right, and they're like kind of firefighting, and as things come to them, they're dealing with stuff versus being proactive about their time and setting, boundaries around where they get focused and work on the priorities they laid out. So on that note, what do you see as the key priorities that business owners should be carving more time out for?
Um, yeah, so I think the biggest thing that they could do is where do they have the most amount of impact on the business, right? So depending on what you like to do in the business, maybe you're the craftsman in the business, and the best thing you could be doing is being on site, being the craftsman, right? Maybe that's where your skill set is. That's what you built the business around. Then you need to kind of find other people to do those other things. Um, maybe you're the salesperson. Maybe you are the face of the business and you need to be doing sales. You need to be in front of clients. You need to be at trade shows. Whatever it is that your skill set that you find that you do naturally, that energizes you, those are the things that you need to be able to do. And then you just need to set boundaries and figure out how to off put some of those other tasks within the business. Those tasks still need to get done, but you still need to figure out who can do those tasks so that you can do whatever you want to do within the business. So for me, mine is coaching. Mine is the one-on-one, sitting across from a client or a team. That's the number one thing I can do. I can't have anyone else within our organization do that, but someone else can answer my emails for me. Someone else can schedule these meetings. Someone else can do all my editing or create better content for me. But those other people can't do a one-on-one coaching with an owner. So I always have to look at my week and go, okay, is this good use of my time? And is this task keeping me away from sitting across from an owner and helping an owner build a better business? So it's just looking at your time differently, to be able to do that. So, and you can't do that without controlling your calendar. You need to control your calendar. You need to be using it. You need to be blocking time. You need to be setting up time in your calendar to just slow down. Kind of that whole analogy. You got to slow down to speed up.
Mm,
And so many people right now are just running so quickly right now that if they do one misstep, it just falls apart. Right? There just seems like they're just on this brink of disaster. And there's just so many things that can happen. So, but yeah, you really got to slow down to speed up within the business. And again, that's what we're talking about, right? That's what's holding some of these people back, is that.
yeah, it's amazing. And one of the things I find very specific to that idea about slowing down to speed up, and so once a year I would send out, I send out a anonymous CEO survey, get the team to give me their feedback. And it stings. Like it's the worst actually. But you do it once a year. And the first responses are always like, oh, they don't understand, they don't get it. But then once you see, 25, 30 responses that all have some similar flavor, you're like, okay, there's a theme here. And it actually was 2 years in a row. People were saying you change things, but we don't understand why. Or we start doing new things and we don't understand the context of where the decision came from. And originally I was always just like, well, I don't have time to explain it all. We got shit to do. We got to get it done. Let's just go. Like, I know it's the right way to go. But people would be sitting there afterwards, like, I don't think this guy knows what he's talking about. Like, we're changing things again. Like, what's going on? And the literal translation of slow down to speed up was, I'm going to take time to write out something. I'm going to present it to the team. I'm going to present it to groups. I'm going to talk to people individual about this new strategic direction that we're taking the organization in. And and actually, I mean, I don't need to go into the full detail of the story, but um, what was fascinating was for me to take the time to talk to people individually in small groups and then in a large group environment about what we were trying to accomplish. I took an extra maybe 3-4 hours over the course of maybe 2 weeks. But then once we made the decision as a group, as a company, everyone's like, "Cool, let's go." And I think that slowing down to speed up is a big deal. And I think a lot of times owners don't necessarily spend time with their team, especially the best ones. I think I find it's usually inverse. We spend more time with the people that are difficult and having trouble. We try to fix them versus spending time with people that are amazing and giving them more space. Do you see that a lot?
Yeah, and the key to that is 100%. You do see that all the time. Is that we're talking about the C and D players so much in the organization. We're not talking about those A players until the point that A player comes and says, "Hey, by the way, I've taken another job."
Mm,
And the owner's always surprised. They're like, "What? I can't believe it! Like this is like I'm blindsided by that." And at that time, I'm just like, no, because you have not spent enough time with those A players. We've been dealing with the C and D players. We haven't had that crucial conversation with that C or D player. We haven't got rid of them. We haven't dealt with it. So those A players are just kind of plugging away in the background and understanding they're not getting the attention they need. But that's a true indication of the owner's just moving too fast and it's not taking the time to do that type of stuff. So yeah, you gotta own your calendar. You gotta be able to manage your time. We see too many. The other thing is like when you have way too much on the go, and we say yes to too many things. The one thing Marla and I were talking, my wife and I were talking about the other day is, I think we're after the whole COVID and it sucked. It was brutal, but we seem to be in this rhythm right now where everything's moving really, really fast again. Like it seems like we're out 3 or 4 times a week right now in the evenings, and just like our whole family is just moving at really fast pace right now. And I was like, I just don't like that. So we've got to control. We have to really look at it, like how much time are we committing to things, and everything we're committed to is all good stuff. There's nothing bad about it. But one day there's going to be an opportunity to come along that I really want to do, and I'm going to be overcommitted, and I'm not going to be able to, you know, have that dinner with someone or get involved in that committee that I never thought I had the ability to do. Stuff like that, that you're just not going to be able to do it. Take advantage of that opportunity if you're doing too much stuff.
right. And again, the slow down to speed up, giving yourself the space. Um, you talk a little bit about you said some notes over before about the routine when it comes to time. I wouldn't mind we could touch on that quick, and then we can wrap up here about daily, weekly, monthly kind of rhythms or repetition in events. Or could you speak a little bit to that? Like if I'm sitting there as an entrepreneur right now, like, okay, you know what, you're right, I am doing too much. I need to strip some stuff down and start taking control of my calendar differently. What's one or two things I can start doing to make that like that nudge to being a bit more effective?
Mm-hmm. And again, just controlling your calendar. So for me, I've had to learn this the hard way again. Like so, right now I have a great morning routine now, and so in the morning it's I get up fairly regularly. It's around the same time. First thing I got to do is I got to jump on. I got to get some exercise. Whether I have a Peloton, I love my Peloton, or take the dogs for a walk. They're just I try to do that. Get a smoothie, get a breakfast, and then like even then look at my phone. But so many of us will get up in the morning, we roll over, we grab our phone, we start looking at our phone.
Hmm.
Probably the worst thing in the world you can do right now. So just putting boundaries around your phone. So do not look at your phone first thing in the morning. Get up, have a routine. Maybe have coffee with your significant other. Do something other than work first thing in the morning. But if you plan that out every morning, then it sets your day off to a good tone. I love regular meetings, so again, just set those regular meetings up. Maybe you have some regular one-on-ones with your leadership team or your direct reports. Set those up in your calendar, be able to do that. A lot of times I see people with sales calls, people just will be like, they have sales call anytime the customer wants, right? Where I see
Right.
the best salespeople actually have blocks of time. Yeah, I do sales calls Wednesday mornings, and I have one evening in a week I do sales calls, and just block them in there, right? And if maybe all your blocking is full for the week, then the customer will wait to the next week. Potential client will wait to the next week, but we don't do that. We just like when can you meet? and we do it.
Right.
And then we typically sacrifice, well, a lot of times we sacrifice our family time to be able to do that. So to me, getting in a daily routine, getting a weekly routine, and then even a monthly, and the best year. I love coming to, my Christmas break, because I try to strategically plan my whole year, right? Like, when are we going to do family vacations? When are birthdays coming up? What am I going to take? When events are we going to do throughout the year? So most of my year is already pre-planned by January 1st. Like,
It's
probably I would
awesome.
say
Yeah.
50% of my year is already done. So I'm already pre-planned. And then when someone comes to me and says, "Hey, can you do this for me?" I go back to my calendar. I'm like, you know what? I do. I have bandwidth for that. Or no, actually, I'm out west for a conference that week. I can't do that for you. So again, looking at that type of stuff. The one thing I want people to do is just really just like start, get some hobbies, book family time in there. We always hear like, family is so important, but we don't prioritize our family. We don't prioritize time with our significant other. So, go on a take it, do a date night every other Wednesday night. But if you put in your calendar that it's there, that you probably won't book it something else on Wednesday night. But if it's not in your calendar, you're not going to do it, right? And it just gets away on us. And like, oh, we went for a date a couple of weeks ago. And you're like, well, that was 3 or 4 months ago.
Right.
But again, if you get in your calendar, you do that. And our spouses, our significant others are so patient with us as entrepreneurs, that we do need to give them the time that we do give clients or our staff and stuff like that. And usually they take the short of the stick. Our kids do that type of stuff. So, and then take proactive time with your staff. Again, that's the thing that staff, your A and B players, are what's going to move the business ahead. If you don't take the time to spend time with them, even if it's just a tailgate talk, or take them in the truck and give some windshield time with them, or take them out for lunch, they're not going to be there long term, and you need them there. They're running a lot of your business you don't even know about, and we take them for granted. But again, put that in your calendar. Even if it's just once a week, I want to take a staff member out for lunch. You don't have to go, 6 months in advance who you're going to take out. But at least it's in your calendar to be able to say, this week I want to take out one person, and it's in there. So yeah,
Yeah,
so
that's
just
cool.
setting that up.
I love it, man. Um, so I mean, money mindset, um, this whole idea around understanding, managing people, managing yourself, crucial conversations, obviously a great resource for that, and time management. You mentioned buy back your time. I always ask the question of like, what's one resource you'd recommend entrepreneurs to check out, or something that's impacted you that you want to share? I know you've already shared a couple in the interview. So, is there anything that kind of stands out though that you think people should check out?
If this is new to you, I guess, like, as far as like, if you're overwhelmed in your business and you don't know where to start, I think the E-Myth is kind of where to start. That was an eye opener for me. I wish someone had given me that book early on. I read that book right when we were at the peak of our pain point with our contracting business, and honestly, I was like,
Oh shit.
"Oh shit!" I'm like, "I am this guy." I'm like,
Bacon pies.
yeah, I was ready for the person, they talk about the home builder, and as admin person walks out with the money, and I'm like, I'm checking the safe to see if someone walked out with the money. But that was a typical, yeah. So if you're a contractor, you've never read E-Myth before, that's the first book you need to read, because it is your life that you're living right now, and it shows you how you got yourself into the situation, how you get yourself out. um, so that's kind of the foundational one. The second one after that is, there's tons, crucial conversations by far. If you have difficulty having those conversations, I think my newest one, and we're giving tons of these away right now, is the Buy Back Your Time by
I
Dan
love it.
Martella. So if you have an organization where you are, especially if you have a middle management or type of organization, there's you as a CEO, you have a middle management group, and then field staff. This needs to be your number one book you need to read right now. Very practical, Canadian. Yeah, but it just is so practical. It's really, really good. And there's all kinds of books on that type of stuff. But I really just like how Dan's done that. And honestly, there's tons of other books that you can read. Why by Simon Sinek. Yeah, excellent resources, podcasts out there, all kinds of stuff that you can do. But honestly, and again, the other thing is just find someone that you can talk to. find a mentor, find a coach, find someone else within the industry that you can go to coffee with. You can have a just be honest with them person, like, hey, I'm struggling with this, or I don't know what I'm doing. How can you help me? And but that to me, it's find someone that you can share those ups and downs with that can help you with that for sure.
So if someone were to want to reach out to you, what would they how would they go about doing that?
Yeah, so you can go to our website. It's nextraconsulting.ca. All our contact information is there. That's probably the best way to do it. If you want to email me directly, it's grant@nextraconsulting.ca. We're on Instagram and Facebook and stuff like that. Yeah, we'd love to talk to you, love to help you through this, and love to send you resources if you want any of these books that we talked about. I'm happy to send you any of them. We love doing that. I'll ship it directly to you. We love giving away stuff. Where I had a bunch of upcoming education through Landscape Alberta and other associations coming up right now. And yeah, so yeah, we're happy to reach out and book a free call with you.
Sweet. Awesome. Again, Grant, thank you so much for doing this and for everybody for listening to this. Yeah, you're amazing. Really appreciate the time.
Awesome. Thanks, Robert. Have a great day.